For
This
those who can't
conference
make
will
it.
now be recorded.
All right, so just briefly, our agenda today is we're going to have the county board candidate forum between now and 12:50. We have Jennifer Carroll Foy coming on board at 12:50 to 1:05, and then we have Mark Herring, the Attorney General, from 1:05 to 1:20. So we have a full schedule today, and for that reason, we'll get started right away. I do want to mention that early voting has begun, and next week, this coming week, is our school board caucus online voting, and I put that in several emails. I will now go over the rules. 5-minute openings. Oh boy, I'm sorry, this is very strange. I can't get this thing to work right. But anyway, 5-minute opening statements, questions, and we'll alternate order who gets to answer first. Please wait until you're called upon or leave a question in the chat, and then 2-minute closing statements. And I'm sorry that my slideshow has screwed up so bad. I will now end screen sharing, and we will go. I did a coin toss all by myself, and Takis Karatonis is the first one up with his opening statement. I've got my trusty iPhone out to time you all with precision. So Takis, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to see you all here, even if it's virtual still. I hope the next one will be all in person and soon. So let me first say, I really love Arlington. 50 years ago, my wife, Lida, and I, we chose Arlington to put down roots. And since then, we have stopped building relationships with our neighborhood, our community, our civic organizations, our local businesses. In the last 9 months on the county board seat, I saw these connections grow even closer. I want to make Arlington a place where everybody can thrive and where nobody's left behind. COVID and our national reckoning on systemic racism after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor revealed disparities and inequalities that tested our values but could not derail us. I believe that we are a successful community when we care for the health and safety of all, when we care for economic resilience of small businesses and working families, when we care for social and racial justice and fairness on all levels, policing, housing, education, access to natural resources. We share the spirit of common cause to confront the climate emergency. In all, we are a successful community when we work together. And this year we did in ways never seen before. I saw how Arlingtonians stood up to the challenge, how they helped their neighbors to make it through the most difficult time in generations. And while my role and responsibility as a board member was new, my vantage point was very familiar. As a street level community activist and also as a street level Democrat who looks back on years of civic activism, I am close and personal with what it means to lose a job, to be uninsured, to depend on food distribution and rent assistance. Registering my minority neighbors for vaccination is a personal issue as much as it is a policy decision. I'm an immigrant myself and I speak 8 languages, which is also true because I'm listening in 8 languages. This is how 9 months ago, after a special election, I hit the ground running. I worked along with my colleagues to make sure that Arlington responded equitably to the COVID crisis, that we had a vaccination campaign that puts practically all doses received in people's arms every week, and I want to continue this way. I worked hard so that we could meet the funding needs of the school board, and we will continue supporting the public schools. I strongly support Arlington's plan to be an age-friendly community because this is good for our seniors and it's good for everybody in Arlington. This is good for transportation, housing, participation and inclusion, and promoting health and wellness for everybody. These are key community goals. I listen to the dialogues on race here at home and how we have to enable and empower our community to bend the arc towards social, racial equity and justice. This is what I'm fighting for. I pushed the envelope on Arlington's climate response to get us closer to a carbon-free 2050. We have to do better there. And this is why I continue to pursue investments in stormwater management, preservation of natural resources, and tree canopy restoration. I will continue to work to offer more housing options for people who, like myself, want to call Arlington home. And this includes making real progress also on age-friendly housing. You know, the goal of 5% of units in new assisted living facilities that should be auxiliary grant units, I support that. Last year, I promised to work on a revolving microloan fund for small businesses. It is now in the budget. So my 9 months in office were Arlington values in action. These were democratic values, my values in action. I'm running for election because I'm passionate for a local government that really embodies these values. I'm proud that all my colleagues on the board have endorsed me, even if we differ in our opinion. We do. The work of the board is always a team effort, but it needs to be fueled by vision, values, and commitment. I hope I earned your vote as what I am: an immigrant, a planner, an economist, an environmentalist, an affordable housing activist, and yes, as a sitting board member and a Democrat. So thank you for having us today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you for honoring the time limitation, Takis. We now have another familiar face with the senior lunch program, Chanda Chun. The floor is yours.
Yes, I also look forward to returning to Busboys and Posts in Shirlington in the near future. Those are always a good treat, especially the cookie at the end. But good afternoon. I'm Chanda Chun. Most of you probably already know me. In fact, some of you might be tired of me right now, continuing to run for office. But this is all part of a greater civic process and, a book that's being written on our society. First, people always ask me then, why do you run for elected office? As a 15-year Army Reserve veteran, business manager, and technology professional, I continue to believe that I'm the best person to provide missing skills and experience for local government that will lead us successfully into a post-pandemic new world. Each run adds to our collective story and forces changes, both large and small. But there are also other fundamental reasons. As a Christian, by way of the church that sponsored my family as refugees to America during the Vietnam War era, I believe that giving my life to others is the ultimate act of love. And as a Buddhist, by way of my family heritage, I believe that we are accountable for all that came before us and bear the responsibility for all who will come after us. Thus, we have a system. We have a system here and everywhere that needs fixing and wrongs that need righting. My Freedom and Justice Plan for Arlington, a culmination of 4 years of community campaigning study, calls for fundamental changes to our local power and policy. It will secure the local economy amidst the remote work revolution. It will be aggressive, adaptable, accountable with vaccine rollout. It will close the digital divide by declaring that all Arlingtonians will have universal access to fast, affordable internet by 2023. It will protect our middle and working class. It will grow our diverse communities. It will empower a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a central citizen body with staff that will methodically examine Arlington's past and propose restorative action for the future. It will update the local form of government to become more representative and responsive. A local form of government created in 1930 during the height of the Jim Crow era, when Arlington was almost 40% Black, and it resulted in an all-white county board for most of the past century. With me, we can take a stand on what Arlington will look like 20 years from now. We can get on a path that is sustainable, financially, environmentally, and socially. We can get back to work, back to school, and back to living. Thank you.
Thank you again for obeying our time limits. Again, we're going to ask you each to limit your answers to under 3 minutes. Hopefully, if anyone asks a question that's more complex than that, we can come back to them later for some follow-up questions, but I do want to move the questions around. My question is the first question, which is, how do you see the long-term budget challenge and outlook for Arlington, given the fact that we don't know how quickly we're going to bounce back from COVID. And we'll let Chanda Chun answer first.
Well, thank you for that question, Robert, or Bob. It's not too formal here. But, as I said in my opening statements, I don't believe we're on a path, and it's not just me, we're not on a path that's sustainable financially. Even before the pandemic, the last time county staff, county manager did long-range budget planning along with schools, we're projecting, budget gaps reaching over $100 million within a few years, by fiscal year 2025. Now add on the changes to our economy that the pandemic has wrought, we're in a really tough spot. We're facing now a 20% office vacancy rate, which is a huge portion of our government revenues. So that's why the top of my platform is freedom from this pandemic, but also adapting our local economy so that it's resilient and adaptive to this, post-pandemic economy, post-pandemic workforce. Now, I want to focus and work with Arlington Economic Development on encouraging growth of higher education in Arlington, partnering with George Mason University, Virginia Tech, Marymount University, so that they continue to grow, that their students who will be transit, who will fill our apartment buildings and patronize our restaurants and bars. I want to embrace the healthcare industry. We now finally, America has realized that our healthcare folks are our heroes. But we could also utilize, research medical labs. Let's retrofit our buildings and get them in Roslyn and get them in Crystal City. And finally, let's fill our hotels, get more tourists here. And these are ways that we can deal with the looming budget issues. But we've got to deal with it. $100 million within a few years. Thank you.
Takis?
I was muted, sorry. So thank you for the question. This is really an important question. This is what keeps me, one of the big questions that keeps me awake all the time. The three, in my opinion, the three critical points that will be tough in our recovery will be funding transportation, especially rescuing Metro, making sure that we come back where the lifeblood of our economy should be. We fund 27% of Metro's budget. This is an important and difficult budget position. Housing is absolutely critical. We have lost market rate housing for a very long time. We cannot house the workforce that will allow us to start new businesses. Everybody who starts a business in Arlington under the old conditions of almost full employment will need to import the workforce, and that means from the region or from other places, and that means that we have to have housing options. If we don't solve that, then we won't be able to compete and to be able to grow. And it is critical that our budget takes this into account and that we continue funding affordable housing. Schools is the next one. Schools have a significant part of our budget that is a they have a structural deficit there. We are working very closely with the school board to find ways to make it easier. We are not going at any rate to be $100 million in the red. So that we haven't been in the past, we are not now, and we're not going to be in the future. We will balance the budget and we'll do it reasonably by focusing on economic development. Arlington can look back at a very solid record of managing growth in a very good way to attract great businesses, but also to provide the ground for small businesses to thrive. This is why from day one in office, I advocated for supporting those who create the jobs. 92% of our businesses are smaller than 50 employees. They're small businesses. This is the base, the rock base, the bedrock of Arlington's economy. We need to invest in them. We need to make it easier for them to open here. And this is what I'm fighting for every day. And I know that on the street level. That means I know them almost personally, one by one. Then The next issue is to get back, and I'm very optimistic there, to get our big, most hit sectors back, like the airport sector and hospitality sector. But it's very important to pay attention on the wages that these sectors pay, on their working conditions. It makes absolute no sense to try to have a recovery without caring about the wages and the income of the people, because at the end, these are the wallets on the street. This is what creates the aggregate demand, and this is what brings our economy forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Hines, do you have a question?
Sure. This may be anecdotal.
I can hear him.
Craig, you have to speak up. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I had to take the microphone out. It may be anecdotal, but there seems to be a disconnect from unemployment and the almost every small business I go into daily has signs, you know, we need workers, we need clerks, we need cleanup people, we need first shift, second shift, we need, you know, fry cooks, all of that. Is there something that the county can do to connect this need, the people who need jobs, even as unemployment is, you know, is up a little, to is there something special that the county can do outside of the state employment operation?
Takis?
There's definitely what county can do, and county can do a far better job. Our employment center has to work better for all these employees. We also have to provide opportunities to reskill and to prepare employees for a shifting workplace. But it's also critical to pay attention to the kind of wages and the kind of working conditions that are offered right now. Many of them are literally not worth sometimes for employees to take the commute. So this is a two-pronged, for me, it's a two-pronged approach. The first is strengthening the employment center, investing in our employment center, strengthening our collaboration with our regional partners to improve education and professional capacitation for a lot of people in collaboration with our unions in our commission, the labor commission, and insisting in quality contracts, in prevailing wages, in our own contracts have to reflect that. So to make sure also that we enforce when we have to, like for example, preventing wage theft and massive phenomena that we had in the past. We are not going to find the willing workforce to support our jobs here if we don't do all the above.
Chanda?
So the answer is part of my freedom and justice plan, the freedom part. That we gotta get people free to work, free to learn, and free to live. You know, so this disconnect between jobs postings and people not taking the jobs is happening all across the nation. But we gotta look at the fundamental reasons about why people won't take a job or why people can't take the job. So first, let's start with our businesses. Are they offering a good wage? Are they offering good benefits? You know, that's why I want to call for crowdsourcing and collecting data and publicizing how much businesses are paying their folks. You know, other localities, I think even as close as Richmond, they provide, I forget what it's called, a certification saying that this business pays a living wage. You know, I want to see that in Arlington. I want us to know which businesses are paying good wages and patronize them. And if they aren't, don't necessarily blame them. Find out how we can get to that point where that they can pay a living wage. If I need to pay more for a coffee or for, you know, hardware goods from hires, you know, anything, let's get to that stage where we're paying workers more. Next is schools. You know, if I got kids at home and I'm the major caretaker, or I have a parent, you know, that I got to take care of, that's an issue. So the county has great programs it's working on there, but we got to keep focusing, working on childcare, making sure that there are options for elder care as well. And this is where we can find ways to partner with our nonprofits to find community sort of volunteer opportunities to try to mitigate this. And the final piece is we got to end the pandemic. We're not all fully vaccinated. The FDA just approved the Pfizer vaccine for 12 years old and up. So now we got to sprint to get the kids vaccinated. And I think if we can get the kids vaccinated, that will make a lot more people comfortable with going out and working. And then once we're able to open the schools, kids will go to school, and then once again, parents can leave the home. So it's really a lot of big reasons. And don't fall, as a total different tangent, it doesn't apply to this race, don't fall for the Republican trap where they're saying, oh, people aren't working because, unemployment benefits are too generous and blah, blah, blah. So we got to make sure that Republicans and Virginia level and federal level don't win on that platform.
Okay, thank you for staying within the time limit. Does someone else have a question they want to pose? I don't see anyone. Kenneth, go ahead, Kenneth, unmute yourself, please.
I cannot hear.
Kenneth, there you go.
I was just mumbling to myself, I'm so Zoom oriented that this platform is, things are different. But yeah, I appreciate both Chanda and Takis taking the time today to join us, and I do miss the lunches down in Shirlington. It's been way too long. But one of the major issues going on today in the affordable housing realm, and most of you know I was 30 years with Arlington County in affordable housing and former housing director, and I'm now on the board of Culpeper Gardens, is the catchphrase, the missing middle. What about the missing middle? And, in some ways, having been in this career for over 40 years overall, even before Arlington, it's sort of, we've always had this debate about whether or not the resources that we have available should go to the poorest of the poor or to more towards home ownership. Well, we've had some home ownership programs before, but it sort of begs that philosophical question. It's always been a question of balance, and the same with this missing middle issue. Right now, I'd almost consider a lot of people on this screen part of the missing middle, because you look at the income limits we're talking about. It's the median income going up over 125,000 a year in the county is leaving a lot of folks behind. And we're also seeing our neighborhoods torn down and redeveloped one by one, single family detached housing. And I think what's not in the missing middle conversation yet is the fact that a lot of the single family owners aging in place are being pretty much thrown under the bus. And we need to fix that. I think we have some big land use and planning issues, and I'd be interested in knowing how Chanda and Takis would look at trying to fix these problems of people being forcefully having to relocate just due to the economy and the fact that the developers are paying $1 million for a house to tear it down and build a $2 million house. That's not close to the middle.
Okay, thank you. Chanda, the question's yours.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear, or one of my biggest fears with the outcomes of the missing middle housing study. We don't want it, and I'm not trying to scare anyone or vilify anything. I don't want it to end up being a giveaway to rich developers to build $1 million townhomes and more McMansions. So we definitely want the eventual conclusion to have safeguards that if we are going to remove some zoning limits and building limits and upzone, which I believe we need to do, we want to make sure that once again it doesn't result in just $1 million townhomes that tear down trees and cover entire lots. I mean, I live in Buckingham, one of Arlington's most lowest income areas, and yeah, we've got I understood the trade-off. I think it was approved 2 years ago, redevelopment of the old Red Cross site, and we're going to have some affordable housing there. But at the same time, they're building some townhomes and they're $1 million plus. But that's where you could sort of have that balance. I can, all right, I'll take some $1 million townhomes if you can give me some committed affordable housing units. So that's definitely on my mind for the conclusion for this this thing. But you also talked about ownership, and we also need to step back and think about that as well, because we're not making any more land. And the concept that really came about in the 50s.
Sponsor Fauci giving his opinion this week on the future of masks, that they might be a, quote, seasonal thing. Classy retort. Well, think of this as trickle-down semantics, because Senator
Okay, I think something about Fauci on the news. I'll try to wrap up, but the whole piece, we got to rethink about ownership and what's really the goal of ownership, because once again, we're not making any more land, we're 26 square miles. So it's really not feasible that everybody gets to own and plant their flag. And frankly, I don't believe that's a good thing from a community perspective. You know, that's why I want to embrace researching and enabling community land trust to lock the appreciation of the land in that nonprofit, and find ways that we're not just keep flipping through properties hoping that it keeps appreciating. It's just not sustainable that way. I don't want to sound socialist, but yeah, so let's step back and think about that.
I've muted everybody because of that outburst, but I will now turn the floor over to Takis to answer the question about affordable housing.
Thank you. Well, the question was a very complex question. I will try to just focus on a couple of things. Number one, I perfectly understand what it means to have lived a life in the middle class, being now a senior on a fixed income and not being able to follow up and pay the taxes on a galloping or inflationary housing market that is a runaway housing market, especially in the single family home segment. The problem there, and Ken understands that very well, is supply. 75% of our county is single family home, where 25% of the population lives there, and the rest is 25% of the land and 75% of the population lives. Listen, this is a huge imbalance. This is the problem of the bimodal, of the development of Arlington, a bimodal system, which doesn't really serve the goal where we always say, and I'm the first one, that we don't want that no Arlingtonian is displaced from Arlington because of the lack of housing options. So the point is that if we can support reasonable growth, and this is why I'm interested in the missing middle study as a means, potential means to provide more supply, because this automatically, hopefully will provide some rebalancing of this market. But beyond that, we also have to support that with programs. We have tax relief programs for seniors who are really at the end of their wits in this. We support aging in place. We put our money where our mouth is, and this is serious. So this is available right now, and it will continue to be available. However, this doesn't really solve the problem. 2,700 single family homes have been purchased in the last 10 years, like Ken said, to be converted into McMansions. We allow this today because of, we are a Dillon rule state after all. We don't have endless jurisdiction of that, but we have powerful tools and we have to sharpen them. So for example, I've seen places where they create trade-offs. So when, for example, you put very high ceilings in a house, they immediately count it as more more square footage, and so you have to build a smaller envelope if you want the valuable high ceilings. So there are many ways to discourage the McMansion building or to make it significantly less appealing to those who pursue that. I'm working on this, and you will see that very, very soon. Also attaching the real impact of this development to McMansions. Like, for example, we will be discussing next year a stormwater utility where we will be assessing real fees for for the real impact of these houses. And at the end, supporting home ownership is for the medium and lower income Arlingtonians on the long term is what will create wealth. It's also an equity issue. For a very long time, we have left our marginalized communities, the Black community, the immigrant community, without any access to wealth building through home ownership. Our medium income purchase assistance program is woefully underfunded. So this year, I already defended the funding for this program, and I will continue defending the funding and also the eligibility for this program. This all works together. Thank you.
Thank you, Takis. All right, who wants to ask the next question?
Bob, can I ask a question?
Please.
And Ken will know how to phrase it or make it real. First of all, thanks for being a steward at Culpeper Garden, which is one of the best things about Arlington County. Residences like that. But my sort of base question: is it time for Arlington to have a housing authority? How can you put that question without it being the lightning rod that it has always been in Arlington?
So the question is, how do you feel about a housing authority or something equivalent that might be more politically palatable? And Takis answers first.
Right now, I cannot support a housing authority in Arlington at this moment. I understand the advantage of a housing authority because the housing authority would own the assets at the end. We wouldn't have to be in this complicated system of funding, of trying to get the benefits from nonprofit developers. However, our Affordable Housing Investment Fund, the system that we have been running for several years, which we created as a community together, has provided reasonably good, powerful, convincing results. We have been able to sustain and defend affordability against an extremely aggressive market. So on the long term, we shouldn't be precluded from thinking about elements of expanding the commitment and the commission of affordable units on the long term. There is a trend of reducing the time commitment for affordable units. For example, commercial developers by default commit units for 30 years. I think that it should be a baseline of 60 years, which, at the end of accounts, it's almost equivalent to the housing authority. The second thing is that housing authorities have gotten a very bad name in the United States because they are, often connected to issues of corruption, of very bad housing conditions, slums, etc., the prodigos, etc. This is a very heavy legacy. We deliver something way better in Arlington, more flexible, more adapted to our market, but that still doesn't preclude us from thinking progressively about strengthening that and making it more permanent.
Okay, thank you. Chanda?
Yeah, I think along the same lines as Mr. Carantone. I mean, when you bring up a housing authority, how much authority would it have? Under our current laws and rules, how much more authority would it have than our existing affordable housing tools and programs? So that's the question. Like, what, especially in Virginia, what's the gap that it will provide, and then is it worth it to do that gap? While housing affordability obviously is a major issue here in Arlington, at the same time, we're not failing at it. The county has fought vigorously, and it leads the region, it leads the Commonwealth on how much we've done in our committed affordable unit programs, on our grants programs, the changes we're making to zoning and building allowances. So we really got to see what's the big difference that would bring. And then finally, the next piece, I believe this was tried, I think, what, 8 years ago? I think the Greens tried to put it to a referendum. I can't off the top of my head say whether it actually went to the voters. I don't possess that much institutional knowledge enough yet, but those are the two main things. Once again, I don't think, you know, we got to answer the question about what more authority would it provide.
All right, well, the final question, and I'm going to ask you to each goes 90 seconds, is how do you feel about funding for parks, the arts, and cultural resources? And Chanda is first.
Okay, who would say no to that? Parks, arts, yeah, we need all of the above. I do, you know, I moved to Arlington. I did, you know, a lot of young folks, they pick DC, downtown DC, and they want the lights. But for me, that's not what I wanted. You know, I wanted small town charms amidst big city amenities, and that includes having enough green space. It includes looking at my window. Right now, I see a lot of trees here in Buckingham, and you know, mid-rise buildings and houses and things like that. So I want to make sure that we continue to invest in parks, and as we're developing and redeveloping, you know, we vigorously balance that out with green space. The arts, we just had a great arts debate last night. I encourage you all to watch it, hosted by Embracing Arlington Arts, that nonprofit community group. And arts for me, it's about love, it's an expression of our humanity. So Arlington should become an arts destination. I'm tired when people say, hey, let's go experience art today. I'm like, oh, where? And they're like, DC. I'm like, no, let's stay here within the Potomac. So let's really make that shift here in Arlington. Thank you.
Takis?
Yes, thank you. I forgot to say something about the Housing Authority before, and it's relevant to the answer to this question. Every public dollar we put in the Affordable Housing Investment Fund leverages other dollars, private dollars, and this is something that a traditional housing authority rarely can accomplish. The same is true for our support for the arts. The same is true for support for also for park acquisition and other investments in our green infrastructure. But I would like to separate them. Investment in parks, when Arlington is denser, where we have more population, we have growth. Part of our responsibility to manage the growth is to still provide excellent quality of life to all Arlingtonians without leaving anybody behind. And that means that we have to make access to park and natural resources equitable. That's a key issue. And this is why I am supporting and I voted for strengthening funding for parks, for being way more strict and focused in preserving the tree canopy and expanding and restoring tree canopy, in making all these recreational facilities available to everybody. And this is a very good investment for public money. Arts is a completely different, related but completely different level of engagement. We have an artist scene in Arlington. We have to empower and support it. Some of the key assets, like for example, delivering the performance spaces like a black box theater, etc., are significant investments, difficult to accomplish. So Arlington County's role is to put seed money in, but most importantly, to be the agent of leveraging private money in these investments. And this is how we manage growth around here.
Thank you, Takis. We're now ready for our closing statements. And again, we're going to limit them to 2 minutes. And since Takis opened first, Chanda gets to close first.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arlington Senior Democrats. Folks, I'm not a flash in the pan. This isn't the first time I've run for local elected office. This is the 3rd or 4th time, depending how you count it. My run last year got wrecked by the pandemic, then by the emergency Arlington County Democratic candidate nomination rules created in response. and the people deserve a fair, open election. And now they're gonna get one this May and June. In fact, of 3 elections I filed for, there would have been no election had I not done so. And in all the elections I've run in, I've been the only candidate of color. So you think I want to be that guy? I literally waited until the last final deadline day to file forms for this election, waiting for someone else to stand up. And it was the same situation in 2018 in my first primary election race against Matt DiParanti. I waited until almost spring for another person to stand up in this Trump and post-Trump age of activism and political protests. So now I see, now we're in 2021. We're at a tipping point on the future of the Democratic Party in Arlington County. For the party, the anti-Trump motivating factor is gone. Can the Arlington Democratic Party and National Party as a whole integrate the diverse populations of the 2020 winning coalition to ensure a long-lasting, durable majority? And by integrate, I mean a seat at the table of power. And for Arlington County, will we face the current transformative developments and challenges? The lost diversity of people in both race and economic class the past 20 years, lost green space and historic neighborhood floods face the development pressures, the increasing taxes and fees on residents by thousands of dollars year after year and close never-ending budget gaps. I will be a transformative Arlington County Board member that fundamentally takes on these challenges. Vote for the Freedom and Justice Plan, and let's have a good election. It's the democratic thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Takis, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today. At the beginning of the conversation, I said that I love Arlington and that I want to make it a place where everybody can thrive and where nobody is left behind. I said that I believe that we are a successful community when we work together. And that I have a very personal view of what it means, because for many years I've been a street-level community activist and a street-level Democrat who led the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization, Eco Action Arlington, the Alliance for Housing Solution, who chaired his civic association, who was a precinct captain, who led campaigns that brought real and bold progressive change to Arlington. I know what it is like to create and keep afloat a small business. For everything I say, I can show the work. I'm not a fair weather Democrat. I ran for office and got elected when very tough decision had to be made last July, and when it mattered to have progressive, experienced, responsive, and responsible leadership. My entire civic and political life, I spent building coalitions to provide real solutions that work for all. So all my colleagues on the board have endorsed me. These are the people who I work with. And I'm proud of the endorsements of State Senators Ebin and Favola, Delegates Lopez, Sullivan, and Hope. I'm the only candidate in this race who is endorsed by unions, by those who are the voice of working Arlingtonians. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club on my record, on my vision of sustainable way ahead. I bring the experience, the competence, and the vision in planning, in urbanism, in economic development, in housing and transportation, environmental policy. I've been in the trenches, and I have a passion to shape our future. So I hope to earn your vote as what I am, an immigrant, a planner, an economist, an environmentalist, and a sitting board member, and a Democrat. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Takis, and thank you for both candidates for respecting the time limits. I want to remind everybody on this phone call that early voting has already started, and that you can also request a absentee ballot by mail. And further, I also want to remind you that the school board online voting is next week. I see that we have been joined by Jennifer Carroll Foy, but I'll wait for her to turn on her camera before I introduce her. We're going to visit with her for about 15 minutes, and then we have Attorney General Mark Herring. And there she is. Okay. And I've already written out her introduction, which I will now read if you'll indulge me. Jennifer Carroll Foy in high school joined the junior ROTC, and upon watching the Supreme Court make the landmark decision to open the doors for women to attend Virginia Military Institute, she knew she had to attend. She was one of the first women to graduate from VMI, She went on to receive a master's degree from Virginia State University and a law degree from Thomas Jefferson School of Law. She started her career as a magistrate judge. She was then elected to the House of Delegates. She's resigned from the House of Delegates to run full-time for governor in the 2021 race. So she's one of the many candidates on the ballot in June, for which you can early vote now. And I give you former delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy. Thank you.
Yes, hi everyone. I am Jennifer Carroll Foy, and I am running for governor here in Virginia. And it's an honor and privilege to be with you all today. Would you like
your
me to keep
positions and so on?
Sure. So I'm excited about my race for governor because Virginians deserve a leader who has walked in their shoes and understand the challenges that Virginia families have faced. And people have asked if my journey for governor began recently, and I say no, it began a long time ago. Growing up in Petersburg, Virginia. And Petersburg was once an affluent and well-to-do, predominantly African-American community, but as businesses closed, jobs left, and despair crept in. And politicians of the past will come by and make campaign promises, but when we really needed them to show up in a real way, to help ensure that our schools became accredited and received the funding that it deserved, to combat child poverty, where places like Petersburg have some of the highest levels of poverty in all of the Commonwealth, to bring economic opportunity and jobs to places beyond Northern Virginia. What about Danville and Portsmouth and Pulaski? That's where the politicians of the past did not succeed. They did not make sure that every single community in Virginia will be uplifted in a real way. And so that's really why I'm running. I'm running because I've had to make those tough decisions when my grandmother who raised me had a stroke and became a quadriplegic, and having to sit at my dining room table with my aunt trying to decide if we're going to pay for our mortgage that month to keep a roof over our head, or for the medications keeping my grandmother alive. Because I have gone without health care because I couldn't afford the high costs, and have worked minimum wage jobs to get from paycheck to paycheck. And so it is all of those lived experiences that have fueled me to dedicate my entire life to public service. As a foster mom for 8 years, helping our abused and neglected kids, as one of the first women to ever graduate from Virginia Military Institute, one of the top military colleges in this country, to becoming a public defender, helping brown, Black, and poor Virginians navigate a broken criminal justice system, and of course, being a state legislator, where I ran while pregnant with twins in 2017, being outraised 4-1 and flipped a seat from red to blue. And after being elected, I got to work, passing the Equal Rights Amendment, so women's equality can finally be enshrined into the United States Constitution, help veterans open small businesses, expanded Medicaid to over 500,000 Virginians, and I'm just getting started. So this is a pivotal election here in Virginia, and we need a governor who is ready to meet this moment, a governor who will move us forward and not back, a new leader with a clear vision and bold ideas in order to uplift all Virginians. And that's why, as your next governor, I will bring diverse, high-paying jobs to every corner of the Commonwealth and build a successful post-COVID economy. I will end the digital divide and have 97% of all Virginians covered by high-speed internet. And I will have every 3- and 4-year-old in full-day pre-K. But I can't do it alone. We're running a grassroots people power campaign, so I am nothing without the people. And that's why I'm here to ask for your support. I spent my life standing up for the people of Virginia, and my ask is, will you please stand with me and support and vote for Jennifer Carroll Foy for governor?
Thank you. I understand you're willing to take a few questions, and as moderator, I get the honor of asking the first one. You know, most residents of Arlington are highly motivated and dedicated to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in Arlington. But you're running for governor of all of Virginia, and there may be pockets of Virginia that are less than Arlington on that spectrum. So what can you do to lead the entire state toward a more inclusive future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So one of the things that I learned at Virginia Military Institute, it is my job to get the job done. and not care who people love, how they worship, who they are, where they live. It's about advancing everyone together. And so I can say that many of my policies will uplift people in ruby red areas throughout Virginia. If you go to my website, jennifercarrollfoy.com, you'll see almost 20 policies that I've put out to address everything from infrastructure to healthcare to climate change to affordable housing. And so things that I hope people in rural and Southwest Virginia, or people who don't necessarily think as progressive as many people on this call, is my working family's refundable earned income tax credit. That if you are a worker who makes $20,000 or less and you file taxes, you will get money back into your pocket to pay for childcare, to put food on the table, to pay that back rent. And that's going to help people in the poorest jurisdictions, which are in rural and Southwest Virginia, actually in Delegate Terry Kilgore's district. And so those are the policies I'm fighting for, making healthcare more affordable by investing and funding the reinsurance program where the state buys down the cost of health insurance, making it more affordable. I will have a prescription drug affordability board where they negotiate the cost down for our most expensive drugs, because families are still cutting their prescriptions in half because that's all they can afford to do. And expanding broadband is the top priority throughout all of Virginia. That's the way we'll unlock most of our possibilities and potential here in the Commonwealth. So my policies are diverse, and it's there to uplift all families and not just some. And that's the difference between my campaign, is that I've dedicated my life to seeing, where we can do better, where we have left so many people behind throughout this Commonwealth. And I'm willing to tackle all of our problems in a bold, transformational way. And I have a record of getting these things done.
I'm sorry, does someone else have a question for Delegate Foy? All right, well, could you talk to us about your proposals for economic development, please?
Yes, I'm excited to talk about jobs and economic development. I know that one of the quickest and most efficient ways that we were able to get out of the last recession is through infrastructure and infrastructure projects. So not only will we shore up our roads, bridges, add on to our schools and expand broadband, but we will put hundreds of thousands of Virginians to work, which is exceptionally important. So that's why I support having a bond that will have almost $1 billion that schools can draw from, so they can modernize our classrooms, add on classrooms to places that have become overpopulated to reduce the student to teacher ratio. I will also expand broadband by putting $50 million into our Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, creating public-private partnerships so that way we could subsidize that last mile of internet to communities who are unserved, allowing municipal co-ops and localities to also enter the broadband business as well, and to bid for those body funds. It's also about, having more construction projects. We have bridges and tunnels that have long gone ignored. That's why I will support the light rail from Washington, D.C. to Richmond, and I'll expand it all the way down to Bristol, Virginia. I will ensure that we quickly and efficiently complete the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which is one of the largest infrastructure projects we've ever had in Virginia's history. And I've helped usher in these projects as delegate, approving these bills and budgets to make it happen. So infrastructure plays an exceptionally important part, but there's other opportunities we have. We have to have a skilled and educated workforce, and not just blue collar jobs, but new collar jobs, robotics, nanotech, cybersecurity. So I will continue to support the G3 program, the Get a Skill, Get a Job, Give Back. Almost 2 years of free community college for low to moderate income Virginians who major in a high demand area like early childhood education, cybersecurity, information technology. And I will add renewable energy as a major to that as well, because I will bring 15,000 new renewable and clean energy jobs to Virginia for the next 15 years. I've helped usher in the Virginia Clean Economy Act, making us the first Southern state to have 100% zero carbon emission standard. I will build on that by continuing to clean up toxic coal ash. And doing the things that need to be done so we can move quickly into that green energy future. And one of the first things I'll do as governor is sign an executive order declaring climate change a climate emergency, unlocking the potential and resources that we need to really combat climate change here in Virginia, sea level rise, you name it, and we will get it done. And I can tell you also, it's about ensuring that we do the things that Virginia Economic Development Partnership have said need to be done, and Go Virginia and Virginia Chambers, where I have been awarded for my work down in Richmond to helping us keep our AAA bond rating, making us the #1 place to do business. That happened while I was a delegate down in Richmond, fighting and working hard with Governor Northam, and also having one of the most lowest unemployment rates in Virginia's history. So we do these things by also investing in site preparedness. We don't have shovel-ready sites for these businesses to come. They want to open in 3 years. We can only do it in 5. We have to make those early investments so we can get these headquarters manufacturing jobs back to Virginia. And also, we have to add more money to marketing. I will be the best promoter Virginia has ever seen, traveling this entire country and the world to ensure that people know we have the best people, skilled and educated workforce, best infrastructure, the deepest port on the East Coast, some of the best international airports, and we have the best people as well. So these are the things I'll do to ensure that we bring more jobs and economic opportunity here to Virginia. And you can read more on my plan at jennifercarrollfoy.com.
I should point out that the chat, Kim has posted a number of specific links to your different aspects of your platform. Does someone else have a question for Delegate Foy? If not, Chanda.
Hi, thanks, Bob. Delegate Foy, yeah, I love your Virginia Military Institute background, being a trailblazer. I've served 15 years in the Army Reserve, and there's also not a lot of Asian males there, let alone brown Asian males, so doing that game as well. But on another tangent, here in Arlington and Virginia, military federal jobs are huge. At the same time, we've lost out on some big moves. We used to have the Defense Information Systems Agency headquartered, throughout Arlington Falls Church. We also had Army Cyber Command, a little bit nearby at Fort Belvoir, but they've moved to Georgia. So do you have any insight as governor, as future governor, how you would retain and attract, federal tenants and military and keep those in Virginia? Thank you.
Absolutely. And so it's a number of things. It's some of the issues that we have in Virginia that has to be addressed in a real robust way that we are now is really having to do with infrastructure. It's hard to keep a lot of our businesses here when they know that their employees are going to be sitting in traffic for 2 hours. They are consistently late through no fault of their own. So that's why I'm excited to say, as a delegate, I have helped usher in the transportation funding bill, one of the largest and most historic transportation funding bills in Virginia's history. So we can fund projects throughout Virginia, alleviating traffic congestion, improving the quality of life of people, especially in Northern Virginia. We are heavily reliant on Department of Defense spending. And that's why it's important as well that we diversify our economy, but we have to, and we want to keep, our federal jobs here. And if we have a sequestration, it's going to be an issue for us. But the ways that we continue to work with our federal partners, especially our senators and our congressmen and congresswomen, is by ensuring that we can control our controllables, and that means having the best skilled and educated workforce. That means improving traffic congestion, because that's the #1 issue I keep hearing for so many people on the federal level, that we have to do more to alleviate traffic congestion in Northern Virginia and throughout the Commonwealth, and ensuring that we continue to be the best place not only for business but to live, work, and raise a family. And so that's why having the social programs in place, improving our education system, and finally funding education in a real way in Virginia, our K through 12, is exceptionally important too, because these are all the things that the federal government looks at, as well as potential jobs and companies and corporations when they're looking for somewhere to locate. And as we can excel and win in all of these areas and not just some, it will shore up our positioning to continue to have the federal contracting jobs and the federal jobs here and keeping them here, and also attracting new businesses to Virginia as well.
Joan McDermott. Joan, you have to unmute yourself. I will see what I can do here. We'll get Joan unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Great.
So you talked just a little bit about education in your last comments, but that's what I wanted to ask about, how you would like to see Virginia schools improved and Virginia teacher salaries increased.
Yeah, I want to thank you for that question. And so, coming from Petersburg, Virginia, where we have only 2 accredited schools in the entire city, I remember, not having books to take home and having unlicensed teachers in the classroom. So I know that a lack of access to education is a lack of access to opportunity. So it's really about putting our money where our mouth is. We can reformulate our standards of quality, which is the funding formula used here in Virginia to determine how much money the state pays towards education and the localities pick up the rest of the purse. The problems, that's presented is that you have some localities that can make up the deficit in funding, like in Fairfax, Alexandria, Arlington, Loudoun County, but then you have some jurisdictions who cannot, like Danville, Richmond, Petersburg, Portsmouth. And that's where you see the real inequitable distribution of funding come in some of our most failing schools. And so as governor, I will do a number of things. I will not only support the modernization of our standards of quality, but I will fund it. And it's going to cost us to the tune of $500 million to do it. I support the fact that all teachers should get paid a minimum of $60,000 a year. That will put us right at the national average where we should be. And in the 10th wealthiest state in the country, there is no reason that our teacher pays salary should be in the bottom third, and in some rankings 47th in the country. And we do that in a number of ways. So number one is our lottery funds. So we have replaced the funding that the General Assembly should be paying towards education and teacher salaries with the lottery funds, instead of having the lottery funds be supplementary to what we already put forth in education. Not only that, but if you go to my website and go under my Ethics and Campaign Finance Reform tab, you will see that I have enumerated exactly how I will bring $8 billion of new revenue to Virginia in the next 10 years. And that will be able to fund all the initiatives that we need to get to. Universal pre-K for every 3 and 4-year-old, and ensuring that we fund K through 12 in a real way, have 1 school counselor to every 250 students as suggested by the Department of Education, because our children are going to be suffering from trauma and PTSD. And let's be honest, many of our students have been sheltered in place with their abusers for the last year. So we must have those, counselors in our schools, which is exceptionally important. I also support collective bargaining for our teachers, so they have a say in their salaries and healthcare and benefits and protecting their instruction time and eradicating a lot of the bureaucracy that has made a lot of teachers want to leave the profession altogether. All of these things in conjunction will help to make us the best place for education. I will be the public school education governor. I believe in it wholeheartedly, and I've supported teacher salary increases every single time it's come up. I've supported the legislation that came up to create a bond that has billions of dollars that schools can draw from in order to shore up their schools, modernize their classrooms, and add on classrooms to reduce the student-to-teacher ratio. And I've supported legislation that protects teacher instruction time as well, because our teachers' contract time is 10 hours a day because they are forced to do lunch duty, bus duty, everything but what they should be doing, which is focusing on our students. In relation to COVID, very briefly, I know that there's a lot of loss of learning from our students. That's why I support an extra quarter of school over the summer, not making it mandatory, but optional. But I don't know too many parents who will keep their kids at home. But that'll be a wonderful way that we can assess our students and then address those deficits in their learning. And I also support suspending the SOLs until 2022. Because it's not fair to our teachers or to our faculty, staff, and our schools when COVID has happened to no fault of their own, and our teachers and students have been doing the best that they can. So instead of those SOLs, we will have mandated assessments so we can find out where the loss of learning is, which kids need more attention, and in absolutely having those aides in the classroom to be able to supplement the kids' learning as much as possible.
Thank you for that answer. Do you want to take just 1 minute to give us your concluding remarks, Delegate Foy?
Absolutely, I would. So I would like to thank the Arlington Senior Democrats for having me. I greatly appreciate it. I don't have to tell you all that this election is so important. The Republicans have just nominated their nominee, Youngkin, and he can fully self-fund his entire campaign. He has $30 million at his disposal to spend by November. So it's not enough to just have, people who can raise money. You have to have the most inspiring candidate to win this primary and who's leading the top of the ticket. Because if we don't get our base out, we lose. Youngkin will appeal to independents. Youngkin will paint himself as something that he's not. And they know, and they're relying on this being an off-year election, and that Democrats will not show up. And if we don't show up, we lose the majority, we lose the governorship. And so I'm excited to say that our message resonates with the people. We're mobilizing people across Virginia, and we have a winning record of getting things done for the people in this Commonwealth. So again, this campaign is really about who will make a woman want to stand in line for 2 hours in the rain and go cast her ballot, not only in June, but in November as well. And that's who we need to take us into the future. And I'm excited to be here and ask you for your support and your vote. And let's go out there and let's win this thing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Delegate Foy, and we wish you luck in the election, for which early voting has already started. And of course, the primary is the second Tuesday in June. All right. Well, we're now joined by the Attorney General Mark Herring, who has had a very distinguished career, needs no introduction. He's obviously served for 2 terms now as Attorney General, and has been part to a number of multi-state lawsuits. His office has vigorously litigated before the State Corporation Commission on utility matters. He's been very active in a number of civil rights issues, consumer protection issues. I'm sure he'll tell you all about that. With great joy, we welcome Attorney General Mark Herring. The floor is yours.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for the warm welcome and the introduction, as well as your leadership. And I'd like to say hello to all of the Arlington senior Democrats. It's wonderful to be with you. And I'd just like to start off, first of all, by saying a great big thank you. Thank you for your support that you've shown me over the years. Thank you for everything you do to help get Democrats elected up and down the ballot year in and year out. And I'm very grateful for your time today. For those of you who I might be meeting for the first time, I am first a husband and a father. My wife Laura and I have raised 2 children just down the road in Loudoun County, which is where I grew up. I was raised by a single mom, and my first job out of high school was working construction as a laborer. My second summer, I'd worked my way up to running a jackhammer 58 hours a week in the hot Virginia sun, and I'm here to tell you that that builds both muscles and character. But thankfully, with jobs like that, Pell Grants and government loans, I was able to work my way through college. And then after law school, Laura and I moved back to Loudoun County to raise our family and establish my law practice there. Before we won this job back for the people, Republicans looked at the Attorney General's office like it was a private law firm for the Republican Party. And I had a very different vision for the job. I believe that the Attorney General is the people's lawyer, and that the powers of the office should always be on the side of the people. And that's why one of the first things I did after you all sent me was to go into court and say, no, we're not going to defend an unconstitutional ban on marriage for same-sex couples. We're going to fight for marriage equality. And it wasn't necessarily popular at the time, but it was the right thing to do. We won. We have made so much progress since then. Since then, I have transformed the job into a progressive powerhouse and shown Virginians just what an Attorney General can do. So we protected the Affordable Care Act and Planned Parenthood. I made sure Virginia Dreamers could get an in-state tuition at college. We have fought back against dangerous white supremacist extremism, created the first Office of Civil Rights within the Attorney General's office, and won landmark lawsuits to keep the Confederate flag off of the license plates and other symbols of Confederate propaganda out of our public spaces. We have successfully defended our new gun safety laws. I have returned over $300 million to Virginians in consumer relief and led the effort to stop Trump's racist Muslim ban. Went to the Supreme Court to protect the Affordable Care Act from legal challenge, not once, but twice. And when Republicans wanted to keep their racially gerrymandered districts, I fought them in the Supreme Court, we won. And courts drew legal boundaries and Democratic victories followed. I've been able to totally eliminate the backlog of untested rape kits in Virginia that has meant so much to survivors all across the state, because they know that their Commonwealth is standing with them in their pursuit of justice and on their pursuit on a path of healing and recovery. So I've shown that I can win even the biggest and toughest fights, but there is still a lot more work to do, whether it is expanding healthcare, guaranteeing reproductive justice, building on the efforts that we've made in criminal justice reform and making policing safer, protecting the environment. Still a lot of work ahead of us. And that is why I'm asking again for your help and support as your Attorney General, as the people's lawyer, so that we can continue building off of this tremendous success that we've been making over the last 8 years. And again, I'm really grateful for your time today and look forward to the conversation we have over the next few minutes.
Thank you. I guess I'm first up, well, with a question, and I hope other people start thinking of them while I pose mine. Do you foresee more things that your office can do in your capacity as legal advisor to the various state-owned universities in terms of promoting student rights and campus climate?
Well, certainly it is important that all students are able to avail themselves fully of what a higher education has at whatever college or university they happen to attend. And one of the ways that we do that is to make sure that that they are safe and free from discrimination, and to do everything we can to protect them from sexual assault and sexual abuse. We want to eradicate it. But when it does happen, to make sure that they are met with compassion and that they have a trauma-informed response to help support them. So in 2014, I was chair of a sexual assault task force, sexual assault on college campuses. It was a long overdue conversation. We made historic gains in strengthening our prevention measures, totally overhauling how we respond to sexual violence on college campuses and sexual assault. And so we made a lot of progress. Unfortunately, with the 2016 presidential election, there were some setbacks there, both in terms of the president's rhetoric, but also in terms of the policies that Secretary DeVos has followed. We filed a lawsuit over her attempt to roll back those protections, hard-fought protections and gains. And I'm hopeful that with the new Biden administration, they will be rethinking those policies, and look forward to working with the new administration on doing everything we can to strengthen the policies that we have.
Okay.
Who else would like to ask a question? Ken, do you want to ask? Oh, Joan McDermott, go ahead. Question is yours.
I would like to ask you if the Attorney General's office had any COVID-related issues that you have had to deal with. And
yes.
What they are.
Sure. Well, first of all, my heart goes out to the more than 10,000 Virginia families who've lost a loved one, and so many others have experienced economic hardship, job loss, maybe loss of health care that comes with a job loss. In the beginning of COVID, we had a number of different immediate responses. First, we got a court order to stop utilities from disconnecting service. At the time, we were going into the lockdown, and it didn't make any sense when we were telling people in order to promote the public health, stay at home if utilities were cut off. So we got a court order to stop that. Also went after those who would take advantage of the situation by price gouging. And most of us in Virginia came together to try to help one another get through this pandemic. But experience has taught us that there are always some people out there who will exploit emergencies and crises to try to make money off of people. And so we went after those who would engage in price gouging, and then worked for protections against evictions. Again, so many people had lost work, lost jobs. We needed to make sure that people could stay in their apartments and get through the pandemic. And so we worked in all of those areas. And then one other really large area that was important was going to court to protect our COVID safety measures. There were a lot of lawsuits filed over the gathering limitations, the mask requirement, and a lot of legal challenges were brought, and we won them all. And that is so important because we saw over the last year when states started to pull back their restrictions too soon, or courts in other states overturned those COVID safety measures, the virus came roaring back. And so it was really important that we maintain those COVID safety measures to help Virginians get through this difficult time. I'm really encouraged with the wide distribution of the vaccine. I think the Biden administration has done a great job with that. And I'm optimistic that at some point in the future, and I don't know how long that is, but that we will be in a much better place with, again, the vaccine getting widely distributed, and look forward to a time when we will achieve that community immunity.
Thank you.
Ollie Carruthers?
I've been seeing television commercials for your opponent with the current governor. And I was wondering and hoping that you're going to be putting up some TV commercials too.
Well, yes, we will be. And so stay tuned. That will be coming soon. And we're really working to get the message out about the tremendous success that we've made over the last 7.5 years all across the state. We've been up on TV in Hampton Roads, Richmond, and Roanoke, and Northern Virginia will be soon. It's, as you know, it's an expensive media market, but we're going to be using every mechanism we can to reach as many voters as possible. So please reach out to your network and support, and remind them that I will need your help and support on June 8th, and your vote on June 8th or earlier if you choose to vote early. And just a quick word, speaking of voting, the freedom to vote is foundational to our democracy. And my team and I have worked really hard over the years, but especially this past year, where we had so many challenges between the pandemic and Donald Trump and his supporters trying to undermine the integrity of the election. But we were successful in overcoming all kinds of challenges to make sure that Virginia's elections were safe, free, fair, and accurate. And people were protected from voter discrimination or voter harassment and intimidation. We put out training videos to local officials, local elections officials, and local law enforcement so they would know what tools they had. And so that's the kind of commitment that I bring to protecting voting. And I was really pleased that this year, not only did Virginia show the rest of the country the right direction to go in by passing something like the Virginia Voting Rights Act, but that I worked with the delegate Sia Price to include authority for our office to enforce that. So Virginians can look forward to, and that law will take effect September 1st. And when it does, Virginians can know that I will always give it a very robust and vigorous enforcement.
Great. Can I ask one more question?
Okay.
I know you instituted the animal law group, and I'd like to know, I'm very supportive of that, what kind of success you've had with that.
We really have done a lot with it. We didn't get any additional authority or funding from the General Assembly, but what we did was have a small number of very dedicated lawyers who wanted to support the work that was being done around the state with Commonwealth's attorneys, animal control officers, and others to really enforce our animal protection laws. We were able to break up some and prosecute those, a cockfighting ring and other abusive animal situations. Something else we found, we've done some trainings with domestic violence advocates and animal control officers, because there is oftentimes a connection between domestic abuse and animal abuse. And so we've trained each of those groups to look for signs of the other, so that if there's a situation, that they'll recognize some of the signs and symptoms, perhaps of domestic violence happening in the home, and help the victim break free from that.
Good. Great.
Joan, Ann, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Virginia has passed and supported the Equal Rights Amendment. I know you've been behind that. I want to know if there's anything that can be done to actually turn that into the law of the land.
Yeah, well, I would contend that it is the law of the land, but we need to get it recognized as such. And I mentioned my mom earlier, being raised by a single mom. Before my sister and I were born, my mom was a flight attendant, and when she met my dad and they had plans to marry, she was forced to quit her job because the airline had a no marriage rule for women. And hearing that story over and over just kind of turned me into an early feminist. And remember when she and my sister and I were all supportive of the ERA when it was first, when the momentum first got going in the 1970s. But Virginia, how proud of us are we, of Virginia, that we became the 38th and final state to ratify it. Unfortunately, the Trump administration hated the idea of women's equality being enshrined in the Constitution so much that they strong-armed the archivist into not certifying it. And so we filed suit over that. We had a little setback with an initial court ruling, but we are appealing that. And if it's one thing this movement has taught me, it is that nothing is going to stop it. The advocates are going to just continue to push ahead, no matter what barriers get thrown in the way. So I'm hopeful and confident that we will prevail in that court case. I would also say anything you could do to help try to move the Senate into removing the deadline. It's not, in my view, it's not required, but that's something that that the House has passed. If the full Congress removes the deadline, that could sort of change the dynamic of the litigation and in a real positive way. So to the extent that you're able to do that, that would be one way to continue to advocate. And it is long past time. Women have waited long enough to see that their rights are guaranteed and protected in our nation's foundational document. And it's important for everyone, but especially young girls growing up, to know that the Constitution protects them too.
Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And I think that the Arlington Senior Democrats have waited long enough to hear your closing statement. So if you want to take a couple of minutes, and be sure to mention your website.
Sure, will do. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for your time today and your past support. And I am asking again for your support to be the people's lawyer and keep putting the powers of the office on the side of the people. I have shown that I have the experience and the know-how to win statewide and beat Republicans, keep this job in Democratic hands, and continue to fight for Virginians and the values that we all share. I've also shown that I not only can do the job, but I can do it exceedingly and abundantly well. And usually when you've got somebody who's doing a really good job, you renew their contract. So I'm asking for your help in that contract renewal. And I'd encourage you to support my campaign. You can go to Herring, forag.com. You can sign up for email updates. You can follow the campaign on your favorite social media platform. And most of all, I hope to earn your trust and your vote on June 8th or sooner if you vote early. Thank you again for having me, and I'll see you on the campaign trail.
We can't thank you enough for taking the time to visit with us. It really means a lot to us. And Steve has put your website URL in the chat. Again, I want to emphasize to everybody on this phone conversation that next week is online voting for the school board, starting, I believe, on Monday. And early voting has already started in all of the June 8th primary races. Again, the races are governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and county board. And in 2 of our delegate districts, there is a contested primary for delegate in the 47th and 49th House of Delegate districts. So again, thank you so much, Attorney General Herring, for joining us. And
thank you all so much. Take care.
Okay. We'll be adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.